I just hope that everyone's kind of taking it in and not settling for what's worked in the past for them on other channels. I think you have to be open in your mindset that there is something different and unique here, and that you have to maybe change the way you look at your channels and you look at your overall marketing goals to fit into what Connected TV is.
Hey gang, it's Thursday, March 31st. Listeners, welcome to the Behind the Numbers Daily and eMarketer podcast made possible by Mountain. I'm Marcus. Today's fact: humans can only use a small fraction of Earth's water. So about 70% of the Earth is covered in water. However, humans can only use 0.007% of that water, according to National Geographic. That's because only about 3% of Earth's water is fresh water. Of that, only 1% is drinking water. The rest is locked up in glaciers, ice caps, in permafrost, or buried deep in the ground. Anyway, today's real topic is a conversation between our very own senior analyst covering TV and video, Ross Benish, and Imani Clark, senior platform experience manager at Mountain. They're going to be talking all about measurement in connected TV advertising.
Well, Imani, welcome to the Behind the Numbers podcast.
Hi, thank you.
So there's been a lot of coverage about how the CTV landscape is evolving quickly. And I was curious, do you believe that there's any tactics that marketers should keep in mind when they're developing their CTV strategies?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's so much to keep in mind when it comes to looking into connected TV for the first time as an advertiser. You want to keep in mind your targeting solutions that you're going for, the inventory that you're running on. Then I think most especially the biggest question is going to be, okay, how are you measuring success and what is that attribution model that you're looking at? I think those last 2 points are going to be probably the most essential things to look for when you're building out your connected TV strategy.
Can you elaborate a little bit further on measuring success and how marketers should approach that?
Yeah, absolutely. So measuring success is how you're determining if your connected TV advertisement was actually successful, right? And I think traditionally when you look at other marketing channels, there's more of that direct touch, direct click action that takes place with it, right? I get sent an email from a company, I click on it. Okay, we know that that direct click was tied back to the email I received. You don't necessarily have that direct click when it comes to connected TV, when you're thinking about just exposure to an ad, really. If I'm sitting on my couch watching TV, how do we know that I saw that ad and then I came back and visited the site? So you want to make sure that you're working with a solution that can really help you measure the engagement, the site visitation, and maybe even those ultimate conversions and conversion behavior after exposure to that ad.
Well, there was a lot in that answer there. It sounds like with measurement, you're talking about audience measurement, verification that the person actually saw the ad, and then outcomes, whether it drove a conversion, site traffic, sales, whatever the KPI is. Out of those various facets of measurement, which one do you believe marketers struggle with the most when they're launching CTV campaigns?
That is a loaded question. That's a great question. I would say, I think probably the hardest thing to connect is the actual serving of the ad to the user actually returning back to the site. I think that's where it gets the most tricky because you're not returning back on the same device. And I think that's probably the most important thing to focus on. That being said, everything from am I targeting the right audience to was the ad served correctly and reaching the correct user, I think those are definitely important questions to ask. I think those can't get lost here. But I think being able to connect the activity across, watching the TV on your couch in the living room to, okay, did this user return back to the site to convert? That's going to be super important because the outcomes are, at the end of the day, how most people want to measure success when it comes to their marketing.
Yeah, outcomes-based measurement is ideal, but it's probably the most difficult to successfully implement. What sort of challenges do marketers face when they're trying to install outcome-based measurement around CTV?
That's a great question. I would say there's a few things. First, I would say you need to make sure that your goals are going to be feasible, right? When you get to connected TV and you're trying to build out this model of outcome-based attribution, You want to make sure that you're setting goals that are feasible, but that aren't necessarily based on what other channels are doing that you're familiar with, right? TV may not perform the same way as display or email marketing. So that first thing you want to do is kind of understand your baseline goals when it comes to the outcome-based attribution or outcome-based solutions coming from connected TV. Then I think secondly, you want to make sure that you're partnering with someone who can give you more deterministic outcome-based performance, right? Someone who can definitively connect a TV spot to a visit that isn't just, okay, we served this TV ad and this is the volume of visits that occurred 15 minutes later, right? That's what we're traditionally seeing with linear TV. That same model just isn't going to hold as much weight with connected TV, where ads aren't being served at a specific point of time during the day or a specific day of the week, right? You want to be able to measure that outside of that traditional kind of spike analysis that we see with linear TV.
About setting realistic goals, which you mentioned a little bit ago, do you believe it's common that marketers are utilizing unrealistic KPIs or perhaps just too many KPIs when they're trying to measure the success of a campaign?
I think it's a good question. I think what it comes down to is most advertisers are thinking about KPIs that exist either in a very direct touch type of advertisement, like display advertisement or like email marketing or like social, or you have advertisers that are so used to how it works on linear, where they're like, okay, exposure happens, and then immediately afterwards, I should see a spike in calls. I should see a spike in visits to the site. I should see a spike in form fills, right? And that's just not how connected TV exists in the industry right now. When you're thinking about connected TV from that programmatic standpoint, you have to combine some of the attribution methodologies that you use with digital, right? Display and everything else, and combine that against what you're doing with linear TV. So the metrics that you're looking at might be a bit different, right? It might be that you're looking at a completed view rate. It might be that you're looking to see, okay, what were the visits that we're driving, right? We're driving engagement. Or it might be, in fact, that you're really driving performance and conversion attribution. And so then you want to look at those conversion metrics instead. You have to keep it all kind of open to yourself to see what makes the most sense for your campaign. And you can't get too bottled down and whittled down to looking at what worked on one other channel. You have to be open to the fact that this may be a different solution.
Is there like a big education effort underway to help marketers understand these differences between linear TV measurement and CTV measurement and all the things you just mentioned over the previous minute or so?
I think it has to happen, but I definitely think that's happening. I mean, you open up any marketing newsletter, you listen to any marketing podcast, you listen, you read anything that you receive around this, and everyone's talking about connected TV and the importance of measurement, the importance of the correct attribution strategy. And so I think there's a lot of education happening. I just hope that everyone's kind of taking it in and not settling for what's worked in the past for them on other channels. I think you have to be open in your mindset that there is something different and unique here, and that you have to maybe change the way you look at your channels and you look at your overall marketing goals to fit into what connected TV is.
Well, and what is you mentioned the importance of having the correct attribution strategy. What does that look like for CTV?
Yeah, I think the most important part of the attribution model for CTV is having some deterministic model that can connect the exposure of the ad back to any site activity. And obviously, it's super easy to think about that in the digital landscape when you are served an ad on the same device and then visit on the same device. Once we lose that ability to track on a single device and we have to track across multiple devices, that's where it opens up this new door. And so you need to make sure that your partner has a deterministic way of tying all of the devices together and not a probabilistic way that's like, oh, well, maybe this household was exposed, so likely the visit that we saw from here is tied back to the ad. We need something more concrete. So it's really important that you're able to find a partner that can provide that to you.
Well, how can marketers vet their partners to determine that the data is indeed deterministic that they're using and not probabilistic?
That is a really great question. I think it comes down to digging into their identity graph, right? How are they identifying all of the devices that they serve to? How are they identifying all the devices within a household? How are they identifying all the devices that return back to the site? It's going to be super essential that you can dig into that with your CTV provider to better understand how that's happening. And you want to understand if that's happening in real time, right? In real time, am I recognizing where I served? In real time, am I recognizing who returned back to the site? Or is this attribution model happening, at the end of the campaign. So once the campaign ends, now we're going back and reconciling all the data that we've received. It's going to be better for you if this is happening in real time, because that means that this partner can also report in real time and they can optimize for you in real time. And that's going to be essential for driving performance, is if we're getting this in real time as opposed to at the end of a campaign.
Will the deprecation of cookies affect marketers' ability to gather that deterministic data?
I think in a lot of ways that kind of goes without saying, but...
And for CTV, which is less reliant on cookies than
yeah, absolutely.
The web is.
I think there are so many other device IDs that we need to take into account that can be used to kind of unite the data, and you can't throw out the IP address, right? The IP address is probably the easiest identifier that we can rely on for tying together both a TV and another device, like a phone or a computer. But there's so many additional identifiers out there that you can still leverage outside of the cookies that will allow you to kind of tie that universe together, to tie back the user who's exposed to the user who then returned back to the site to visit.
And are you seeing a change in the metrics that marketers use to determine the success of their campaigns and of their attribution? And by a change, I mean, are you seeing different things used in CTV to determine success in measurement than what you've seen across other channels, particularly linear?
Yeah, so I think one of the big things we see is that people are now actually tying back their campaigns to, like we mentioned earlier, those outcome-based goals. So you're seeing people who are launching campaigns that have ROAS targets or that have CPA targets. And that's, pretty unheard of when you think about it from a linear standpoint, right? With linear, your engagement isn't going to be as direct as tying it back to a conversion. It might be tying it back to, okay, did people call the number that they saw on the end card? Did people land back on the site that they saw, that specific landing page they saw on the end card? Those are, measurable in a sense through linear TV, especially if it's like a singular phone number or singular landing page that's only dedicated to that campaign. But you're able to get more granular with CTV when you're opening yourself up a bit more and you're not relying on kind of those other outside solutions for drawing a user back to the site.
It sounds like a less reliance upon proxy metrics with CTV than with, traditional channels like linear TV.
That's exactly it. That is exactly it.
Well, Imani, that's all we have time for today. I want to thank you for coming on Behind the Numbers to chat with us about CTV measurement.
Of course, it was a pleasure.
Time now for In Other News, but first a quick word from our sponsor, Mountain. If you could combine the precision targeting of digital advertising with the impact of television commercials, you would have an incredibly effective ad channel. And that's exactly what Mountain Performance TV does. Their connected TV software platform allows advertisers to reach their ideal audiences and drive more visits, conversions, and revenue, all from a single intuitive solution that's optimized to deliver performance. Visit mountain.com to learn more. All right, folks, it's time for In Other News. Ross, thank you so much for sticking around. Today, in Other News, the most interesting thing about US programmatic video in 2022, and is it time to hit play on movie theater ad buys? Story 1. Ross, your latest report is called US Programmatic Video 2022 and looks at how marketers are embracing a thriving ad channel. You point out that this year, US advertisers will spend $63 billion on programmatic digital video. That's up from $52 billion last year, 52 to 63. You also know that mobile represents 2/3 of programmatic video advertising, but its share is declining as CTV earns more ad dollars. But Ross, one of the other most interesting findings from this piece was blank.
Well, that was what I was going to say, was that the most interesting finding was the mobile part. So let me scroll through
Tell me one.
Well, I believe the most interesting part of the report is that
Let's double click.
mobile still accounts for about 2/3 of programmatic video ad spend in the US. We give all the attention to CTV because that's where their growth is, but there's still a lot of dollars going through mobile, and most of that is due to social's dominance. Facebook, Twitter, etc. are mostly mobile ad companies.
Was there anything in this report that was maybe not less interesting, more surprising, you weren't expecting?
Something that was a little surprising, and it came from some IAS data, was that marketers believed that their exposure to CTV ad fraud would actually decrease in the upcoming year.
And that's not happening.
Well, we'll see if it happens. We'll see how many schemes that the verification companies like IAS uncover. But
right.
The concern of ad fraud had generally been increasing for a while. So it's interesting to see that the outlook had changed and marketers believed, well, we're not going to be as exposed to ad fraud in CTV this upcoming year as we had in the past. I guess they believe that they have better methods to vet this stuff than they had in the past.
Yeah, we shall see. Story 2. Is it time to hit play on movie theatre ad buys? Asks Olivia Morley of Adweek. She believes that cinemas are an alternative for advertisers that want to connect with cord cutters. Screen Vision, which serves ad impressions to about 40% of the movie theatres in the US, had doubled its revenue and tripled its profits between 2015 and March of 2020. Enter the pandemic. But blockbuster movies are back in theatres and young adults are buying tickets, Miss Morley writes. But there are fewer older moviegoers. According to Nielsen data, 76% of 2021 moviegoers were in the 18 to 49 age group, that's 6 points higher than 2019. Half of moviegoers were 18 to 34. Miss Morley thinks that many young people are cord cutters, and so a movie theatre is one of the rare places today that advertisers can connect with them. Ross, the idea of advertising in cinemas to reach cord cutters is blank.
It's intuitive, and there is some data to support it, but you just have to keep in mind that money spent on cinema is a subset of out-of-home advertising, and it is likely in the millions of dollars, not in the billions of dollars like you see with OTT and with linear TV. So if you're going to use cinema to reach cord cutters, it's a nice tactic to have, but it's not going to make up the heft of your campaign.
That is all we have time for. Ross, thank you so much for hanging out today.
Thanks, Marcus.
Thank you to Imani, who joined us in the first half. And thank you to Victoria. She edits the show. Thanks to everyone listening in. We'll see you tomorrow for the Behind the Numbers Weekly Listen, an eMarketer podcast made possible by Mountain.